Let's say you're in a business meeting or interview, and you need to multiply 60 million by 3,000 mentally. Do you have the answer? Most people need pen and paper to do this calculation, and they calculate the result like this. They write 60 million with all the zeros, which is 60 with 6 more zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then they write out 3,000. Then they multiply 3 times 6, which is 18, and write this down. Next, they count the total number of zeros in the two multiplication terms. How many zeros do we have? We have 7 zeros in 60 million and 3 zeros in 3,000 for a total of 10 zeros. Then they add 10 zeros at the end of 18 or append 10 zeros to 18. So they write 10 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now they need to visually interpret this result, which can take a few seconds. What is this value? Go ahead and say it out loud. Most people get the wrong answer if they perform this process mentally without using pen and paper. But using pen and paper takes time, and you may not have pen and paper handy. We'll come back to this number later. But you don't need to do the calculation this way by counting zeros. I'll show you a faster and more efficient way to multiply large numbers, which is easy to do mentally. I created this method and have been teaching it for the last 10 years at leading business schools like Harvard Business School, Wharton, and MIT, and leading consulting firms like McKinsey, BCG, and Bain also teach this method to their consultants. It works like this. First, we write or represent the numbers using the abbreviation M for million and K for thousand. These values are called units of magnitude. So this calculation becomes 60M times 3K. K is short for kilo, which means 1,000. Note, I read the abbreviations out loud as the full unit name, so I would read this out loud as 60 million times 3,000. Next, we multiply the numerical portions, which are the numbers before the abbreviations. 60 times 3 equals 180. Next, we multiply the units of magnitude. What is a million times 1,000? Or, what is M times K? Well, a million times 1,000 is a billion, which has the abbreviation B. That is, a billion is 1,000 millions. So using abbreviations, M times K equals B. And guess what? We just combined these two pieces of 180 and billion to get 180 billion. That's 60 million times 3,000. That's it. As I like to say, look, Mom, no counting zeros. And this method is called no zero multiplication. Because we don't count the zeros. We just multiply the numerical portions, 60 times 3 equals 180, and the units of magnitude, million times 1,000 equals billion, and combine these results. If you write this calculation with all the zeros, you'd have this result, which is difficult to interpret as you have to count the zeros to determine the value. To help with this, we place commas every 3 digits starting from the right. So commas go here, here, and here. Interpreting this number, the first 3 digits from the right are ones, tens, and hundreds. The next 3 digits are thousands. The next 3 digits are millions. And the next 3 digits are billions. So the answer is 180 billion. Just like we found with no zero multiplication. Most people need pen and paper to perform a calculation like this because they need pen and paper to count the zeros, which is very slow. For comparison, no zero multiplication gives us the answer in the unit of magnitude directly with the abbreviation B, is incredibly fast, and is much simpler than traditional long-form multiplication. With a little practice, no zero multiplication is easy to do mentally without relying on a pen and paper or calculator, which is a game changer. The point is that using unit abbreviations like B is another way to write and represent 180 billion. I used pen and paper to show this, but this process is easy to perform mentally. Just remember that million times 1,000 equals billion. This is an important unit multiplication fact, so I'll write it down separately. M times K equals B. Million times 1,000 equals billion. Another example, what is 30 million times 8,000? Using abbreviations, this is 30M times 8K. Multiplying numerical portions, 30 times 8 equals 240. Multiplying units of magnitude, what is a million times 1,000? Or what is m times k? This is the key step. We learned before that million times 1,000 or m times k is a billion or b. And we just combine these two pieces of 240 and billion to get the result of 240 billion. It's that simple. And we can leave the result like this with the abbreviation b for billion. Again, this method is called no-zero multiplication. Once you master no-zero multiplication, you don't need to write these out on separate lines. You can write it all on one line if you're using pen and paper. Just multiply the numerical portions, 30 times 8 is 240, and multiply the units of magnitude, million times 1,000 equals billion. I just wrote it on two separate lines to demonstrate this for people who are learning. As another example, what is 3,000 times 4,000? Multiplying numerical portions, 3 times 4 equals 12. Multiplying units of magnitude, what is 1,000 times 1,000? Or what is k times k? 1,000 times 1,000 is a million, or m. So the result is 12 million, which is what you would get in long form format with all the zeros. Doing this calculation, 3,000 times 4,000, we would calculate this as 3 times 4 equals 12. Next, we count the zeros. We have 3 zeros here and 3 zeros here for a total of 6 zeros, which is 12 million, just like we found with no-zero multiplication. So the first unit multiplication fact is that 1,000 times 1,000 equals million, or with abbreviations, k times k equals m. And this is important, so I'm going to write this separately. K times k equals m, or 1,000 times 1,000 equals million. These two facts will handle 90% of business calculation scenarios. There are two other facts you should learn. What is a billion times 1,000? Billion times 1,000 is a trillion, which has the abbreviation T. As an example, what is 4 billion times 2,000? 4 times 2 equals 8, and then billion times 1,000 is trillion. So we have 8 trillion. So we don't need to write these on separate lines, but doing the numerical portions and the units of magnitude separately, 4 times 2 equals 8, and then billion times 1,000 equals trillion. So we have 8 trillion. Finally, what's a million times a million? Well, a million is 1,000 times 1,000. So to get the answer, we multiply million by 1,000 twice. Million times 1,000 equals billion, and billion times 1,000 equals trillion. So the result is trillion, or T. These are the unit multiplication facts, and these are the definitions for these abbreviations. These first two facts are the most important. 1,000 times 1,000 equals million, with abbreviations k times k equals m, and million times 1,000 equals billion, with abbreviations m times k equals b. We also have billion times 1,000 equals trillion, and million times million equals trillion. I have another video which explains where these facts come from, the overall pattern, and how to learn it. So follow for more fast math methods, and check out my YouTube channel for a more detailed explanation of no-zero multiplication and other business calculation topics. Thanks, and see you in the next video.